Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure, mine. So we figured, and I think after talking about it, get a little into a routine of coming on and just talking about whatever's on our minds, issues of the day, issues of society, whatever, or maybe
Local.
cool stuff.
Yeah, local issues, cool stuff,
Yeah.
what have you.
So, topic of today, most important issues like to you, top one, top two, whatever they may be. You're still kind of thinking about yours. I got mine locked and loaded in case anyone asks me that question. So for me, number one issue when I look across the whole thing, it's all about economics.
Okay.
We can talk. When you look at kind of things on the political spectrum, this and that, and this guy's president, that guy's president, we have this Congress going this direction and this and all this, we do have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
One thing that always kind of gets ignored is economics.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think that's so important, especially for like our economy specifically, if that crashes, my fear is that like we're going to end up like Venezuela, which they're basically a real life version of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And we've seen it all throughout history when economies collapse because of printing or just a variety of different reasons, that your money becomes useless. You can't exchange goods or services with people anymore, and we're so dependent on that now. Even though myself, just thinking to myself, I don't know, how would I get food if I didn't have any money, or if there's no money, and if my money is just as worthless as the store owner's money, he can't get food even if he wants to. I can't buy the food even if I want to. What happens then? Now we're eating dogs in the streets and stuff, and it's like, and it's funny to think about, but I think too many of us think that it couldn't happen here, and it 100% can. Like I tell people all the time, we're living in like a matrix right now, where everything is so good. Amazon gets me anything I want in 2 days, anything.
Yep.
I can't think of anything I couldn't have without someone shipping. I almost have access to everything in the world, and it's I think we just have to really remember that this is all because we have this structure in place that supports that, and it's people working, and it's maintaining a strong dollar and being mindful of these things. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So that's a very interesting topic, and I definitely think that we can probably dive into that one issue this whole episode.
Yeah, probably.
Absolutely. Because it's definitely a wide spectrum in different ways you can tackle it. Now, as far as economics and specifically talking about U.S. economy, I think the interesting thing about economy now is that as of right now, it's still U.S. dependent, but I can definitely see that changing in the next 10 to 15 years. And I believe with that changing in the next 10 to 15 years, the possibility of a global collapse probably shrinks very minimally. Because if you think about, I know the Asian, I forget the new trading deal that's between like South Korea, Japan, China, Australia, basically all the countries on that side of the world. That's going to be the biggest trading deal in history. The U.S. is not even involved.
Oh, wow.
Not even involved in the trade. So it's very interesting now to look at economy as it is and how it's going to transform and our place in it. And even if we have less of the market share, is that better off?
Are we better off?
Yeah, are we better off just in general? Because now we're not depending on the Fed or whatever thing could happen in our economy, because we may have access to other means. Now, of course, that's going to be for a small percentage of Americans. So if something were to happen with our economy and we were to really tank, and like you said, we'd be eating dogs and it'd just be complete, no law, just complete Walking Dead style, like you said. It'd be interesting to see how this country would react, because like the last time we had there's a recession that we had in '08. Of course, it was a little bit different. A lot of people lost, just a lot of money. But if you think of the Depression, like, there was a lot of things happening. There was food crisis. It was a lot of oil. There was a bunch of stuff that played into it. Now, as we move into renewable resources, and I don't know if the stoppage of our dollar, or our dollar not being worth as much as it is currently, would that stop the supply?
Well, you mean like the supply of like food and
just goods in general? Is that going to stop the motion of people producing, or will they find a way to, I don't know, even change currency or find another district? It's very weird, and I think society being as innovative as it is and technology being as strong as it is right now, I don't know if the next recession or depression will be the same as it's always been. Statistically speaking, it probably will be. But I think it's interesting because I think with human ingenuity, we've come up with ways to solve issues in so many different ways.
I see what you're saying. It would be interesting. Well, it would be horrible.
Yeah, it'd be horrible.
From like a third person perspective.
Yeah.
Like, it'd kind of be interesting just to see how it would happen here. But I fear that it comes down to the money, to the strength of the dollar in our case. And if it's not, if it crashes, and let's say someone, for whatever reason, and this is kind of where I don't really have the right answer yet, but like, just like in my life or your life, if you take out money, you have a debt now.
Yeah.
With a bank or with whoever you owe the money to. And at some point they come to collect, and if you don't pay them, you suffer some kind of consequence. How does that really work with like the federal government? Or like they can borrow from different countries, they can print money, which kind of makes they're not really accountable to everyone. Like if China's just like, hey, pay us our money right now, and we just go, nah, we're good. Now we could essentially kind of steal all the stuff that they invested. They're like we could probably just take all that stuff because it's in our country. But now we don't have any more. No one's who's going to loan to us now. So if we don't, we lost borrowing. Printing we have to be careful with because otherwise that devalues everyone's money. Oh God, what's the third way they can get? Oh, they can tax stuff, but that also creates other problems and incentives throughout the economy. And so it's there's no real mechanism for them to kind of address that. If somehow, but that's the thing. My big question for myself and for everyone is that what is the mechanism that would act like a bank for us? What's like the higher power that goes to, hey, U.S. government, you owe us money now, and like if they don't pay up, like who is that person above them? Or is it something? I think the Constitution, it's the people. Well, it's supposed to be.
It's the people. I think.
But we could never. What would that look like? If we were to say, because you actually are right, I think. But what would that look like?
It's impossible to say at this point because we wouldn't know how people would react without structure, because there is structure. If you take structure away, like I think we talked about this last time, is the person with no food or the person with food has a million problems or hundreds of problems, and the person without food has one problem. So if we're as a society now and we don't have food and just the basic necessities that we used to have, it'd just be very interesting. I can't even imagine how people would react to that situation. But one thing I do want to touch on is, how would this occur?
That's my question. Is like, who would? Because right now, we're $22 trillion in debt.
How would we mobilize and actually make something happen? But how would our economy end up becoming so bad? Like, the recession was bad for a lot of people, even for a majority of people, you can say. But for the most part, people survived. It was it was a good punch in the gut and a, maybe a.
Well, I think there's certain
kick.
markets. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
when I think about the recession, there was always food at grocery stores. There was always gas at the gas station. Prices might have been a little higher. I don't quite remember. It was quite a while ago, but
I remember gas being really high. It's the only thing I remember at that time.
I do remember it got to like $4 and people were flipping out.
Yeah, it was insane.
It was. I do remember that, but like, I don't remember like, nothing. Like, life still went on as usual. But I mean, but like all of a sudden, like if that stuff goes, because now money doesn't mean anything anymore. That's what happens then. And I've talked to a couple different professors of economics, and one of them was like, he was like, he almost kind of was like, no, it's not even a big deal. Like, even if it does collapse, it's going to bounce back, because that's what markets do. And he's kind of right, because now that I'm kind of free thinking on it in the moment here, all the infrastructure to do stuff is just there.
Yeah.
All that means is, well, this guy lost it, and so now, the guy whoever owned it, like if I'm thinking like Hershey, like Hershey's chocolate, they have all this stuff to make chocolate. Let's say they lose all their money, all their stuff is still there, it still works. Some guy could just go, hey, I'll buy all that for $1,000, which would probably be, with inflation, probably like hundreds of millions of dollars. All of a sudden, he owns all this stuff now. So now it's almost like restarting. So people that do have some kind of resource can almost restart everything, but it takes time, because you're not going to get to that same level of like manufacturing and distribution that you once had. So maybe he's right, actually. Maybe I shouldn't even worry about it.
Yeah, that one's definitely interesting. And now that we've actually discussed, it definitely got my brain going as well. So if you like, I have one now. I think is the most important issue. Okay, I have two.
Perfect.
But this is one I'll say is a long-term issue. This is weird, because we usually do politics, but I think water. Because if you think about it, I was reading something, and it's like, I think 2% or 1% of all of the water in the world, or only 1% of all the water in the world, is like drinkable.
Yeah, it's like the world is 3% like fresh water total. Everything else is all salt water.
Yeah, right? And like, it's gonna run out eventually, and it's something we need. And I was doing some research. I was doing some research a few weeks ago, and the process of turning salt water into drinkable water or usable water, it's like not sustainable at all.
No, definitely not.
And the rate in which we consume water, I think they said over like a 30 to, eventually it's going to become a major issue. Now it's a major issue across the globe, where like even Cape Town had that, I think they called it like year zero or year Z or day Z, in which they would have no more water. They had to completely cut back on water. They were able to mobilize and actually stop it from happening. And I think they pushed it out like many, many years. But as society progresses and 6 billion people who have access to clean water, not just
water, clean water.
Yeah, clean water. Not just 2 or 3 billion, but everyone on the globe. How long until water becomes a very
scarce resource?
Yeah, very scarce resource. Because you think about it, there's so many companies now buying water supplies. Because that is really an asset. It's going to run out. Like,
I've never heard that though. Is that
it's a thing.
It's a new thing, or has it always been a thing?
It's always been a thing. But I think it's a new thing. I think it's basically like meat consumption. You know how they say, like, the way we eat meat is not sustainable. There's no way we can produce enough livestock for 6 billion people to eat meat like Americans. It's just not sustainable. Food is a little bit different. Like, I can definitely see in the next 20, 30 years, there'll just be a drink that we need to drink. You know, there's like a little meal drink.
Yeah, we don't
and
need
you,
to even
yeah, you don't
drink
even,
this and you're good to go.
Yeah, you're good to go. You drink it breakfast, lunch, dinner. It does take, of course, the satisfying aspect out of a meal, but I can see that as humanity progresses. But with water,
That's interesting.
where do you go when it's no more?
You have 3 days, basically.
Yeah, you have 3 days to live without water.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so many places that experience droughts. California, other places. So I think that's going to be one of the areas that can have a lot of groundbreaking, you know, revolution or technology, because it definitely is an issue. I wish I had the statistics to back up exactly when they say, like, it's going to be a crisis, you know, water crisis.
Yeah.
But
I never thought of that.
definitely, from what I remember, in the century, and on just a world's, even like on a developed world scale, that is nothing. 100 years?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, we may not live to experience, I mean, give or take, like, we can get into genetics or everything they're doing to, you know, extend our lives. We'll probably
Black Mirror stuff.
Yeah, I mean, not even just normal stuff. We'll probably live 10 to 15 years, 20 years longer than average now, which is like 90 to
think
100.
so?
Yeah, I think what is the average
Didn't they actually decline for the first time in like forever?
for world or US?
Oh god, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a headline scroller sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I'm just, if you eat good and you just follow basic things, like you have
Basic exercise.
good diet, you know, all the things, good social life, just a balance of things, and there's not an accident, and with the growing of AI, there's going to be less human error, you can say, then we should expect to live pretty long, and may even live to see water being a crisis. I really think that's an issue. I do.
I've never heard that, because I guess I don't know. I never, you know, of all the crises and alarms that we talk about, you know, global warming and this, you know, all sorts of other things. Water was never one of them. I know, like, there are shortages in certain areas. My understanding was that it was like we have water, but we don't have water to supply like all of California when it's kind of like in a more desert kind of area, I guess. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, some of these areas, they have large populations that can't, you know, people, they don't have enough water for that population. The one thing to take comfort with in this, and this actually I learned from Thomas Sowell, and I think it applies to, he uses it to talk about oil. Because they were talking about, oil was, you know, it's peak oil. You know, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
And he said, all you have to do to monitor that stuff is look at the price of oil. If the supply of oil truly becomes super low, like if demand doesn't change, demand is huge, it's always growing. But if supply starts shrinking, you're going to see prices start to skyrocket. Same thing with food, same thing with meat, same thing with water. Always just be mindful of the prices. Watch the prices. They'll tell you what's going on in the real world, as opposed to someone saying, oh God, this, that. The prices are more truthful than anyone else.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting? I believe when I was reading the article on that, they said if you really want to solve the water crisis, make it really expensive.
That's kind of like, if you make it artificially expensive, then you're misallocating resources, scarce resources that have alternative uses.
Well, I don't know the complete logic behind it, but I think they say, you know, people just waste a lot of water.
That's true.
You know, I take very long showers, and
I mean,
I'm sure
cheap.
other people do.
That's why.
Yeah,
why.
it's
and they're right though. They
Yeah.
are right, because if it was more expensive, you would treat it.
treat it like a valuable resource, which it is.
And that's the thing. It definitely is. It's like the number one resource for life.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, at least by the prices, by water prices, whether you're at the store or water going to your house, it's super cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It's super cheap, and it's.
It'd be interesting to see that change. Like, imagine it being $5 for a water bottle.
Ugh. Not about that life.
No, right? That's insane when you think about it. But
then again, yeah, if that does happen, then behavior changes.
Yes.
That's how economics incentivizes behavior changes, because now it's like, oh, now it's hitting my wallet. So now I'm taking this more seriously. People will probably install, like, one guy came with this idea, you have a foot switch. So you're washing your hands, what most of us do is probably turn on the water, wash our hands, let it run a little bit, wash them. You have the foot switch, but now that also introduces some electrical problems where if you, do something dumb, you could get shocked. So trade-offs.
Yeah,
trade-offs.
and certain things are unavoidable, but yeah, I think that's a concern for myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That was not one of my. Well, like I said, for all these things, for oil, and even like so economics too. It's like, look at these different rates. It's just and that's I think why I'm so worried about that, because like debt, like super heavy debt, it can get to a point where it's unsustainable. And when I look at you can go to U.S. Debt Clock. I love going to U.S. Debt Clock. It has all these numbers breaking down in real time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of terrifying. And they also the only problem with them is they don't include unfunded liabilities, which is your Social Security, your disability, your Medicare, your Medicaid, these kind of things. They kind of for I guess accounting purposes, they look at them differently as like across like what are we projecting for costs over a course of time or whatever. I don't know. The short way of saying that is an economist testified before Congress about this stuff, saying, "Listen, you're saying your debt is $22 trillion, but you're not accounting for unfunded liabilities, which is closer to $210 trillion." He said.
Wow.
And it's like, so you take all of that, you take our economy, our entire GDP, which is about $21 trillion. So even right now, just in our basic U.S. debt, we're already overspending we're already out $1 trillion in the hole. They and all the numbers are incredible. It's just they're just spending more money than they're taking in tax revenue.
Yeah.
And they've been doing this for who knows how long. And the last budget we just had, the last budget that was passed in Congress was in 1997. Ever since then, they've just been doing these continuing resolutions. While we're just going to ambiguously spend stuff, and who knows? And this is how money gets lost. And every 4 years when we have a presidential election, it's always like, oh, our crumbling infrastructure. In my lifetime alone, I think Bush spent money on it, Obama spent money on it, Trump is like, oh, crumbling infrastructure. Like, when do we ever fix this stuff? We always spend money on it, and it's never getting fixed. Like, where's the money going?
So that's one of my main issues with government-funded projects, or government-run, in like anything from building. I think if you even look at California when they tried to build the high-speed train, billions and billions of dollars, and they're still unable to do it. Like speeding up a DMV. I know California spent millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to make the process more efficiently, and they have yet to innovate and do it. And I think if we're going to even touch on the president, reminds me of the time where he built the ice skating rink in New York City. So the previous mayor, I forget his name. It escapes me. But a long time ago in New York City, they were aiming to build an ice rink. And the current mayor, I think it was like 5 years, and they had yet to build an ice rink. I forget which park it is. But year after year, tons of millions and millions of dollars, no ice rink. Trump did of course, he's great at advertising. The newspaper ad, he said, you know what? I can build this ice rink, half the money, way like 6 months or something like that. And he ended up building in 3 months with half the money, right? And the city was taking 5 to 6 years.
That's not a uncommon story.
It's not an uncommon story.
And this comes from a fundamental problem with government and money is that they don't have the incentive to use it as its value.
It's not their money.
It's not exactly.
If people held the government as accountable as stockholders hold the CEO and the entire company, we would have a completely different country.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
a completely different country, and I think that's the issue. I think it is the issue. It's not even. I think it is definitely the issue. And during my campaign, as I was running for office, that's something I always said. We need to work on our private-public partnerships, and I always talked about an urban wealth fund, which is something they use in Copenhagen and Singapore. It's just you give your public assets to private companies so that they can utilize it better and be able to make it profitable. Kick back to the local government, private company makes money, but the local government has no overhead.
Yeah.
So they're basically just shareholders and they just intake money and it's going to be properly run because at the end of the line, the private company wants profit. Mm-hmm. That CEO wants a bonus. That CFO wants that's what they want. And not even mention it. That's probably, one of the biggest issues. If we're talking about America alone, that's definitely
spending, yeah.
The big spending and infrastructure.
Yeah, well, that's a great issue because I think when you think about the landmass of the United States and how even in like the New England area where it was, the first places to be colonized, I think I'll have to double check, but it's some insane number, like 80% of the land is still like undeveloped, nothing going on.
Yeah.
And the federal government owns so much, and that's just in the New England area. Imagine like out west, it's got to be insane.
It's insane, and that's why, that's what I hate. One thing I hate so much is when people compare like the infrastructure of a small place like United Kingdom to something like America. Do you understand how big this country is? Building infrastructure. If America was the size of Florida to Connecticut, our infrastructure would be phenomenal. We would have high-speed trains like Japan, all up and down the coast. It would be there, but we're not. So that's why I believe that we can't leave it up to public companies. I mean, even these smaller countries aren't leaving it up to public companies or the local government or federal government. I think the issue lies with what do you do when you give private companies that much power? Like, I know for the Flint water crisis, when they were looking to see how they can fix it, somebody proposed having a bunch of billionaires come together, give the money to solve the crisis. But if you put that power in billionaires' hands...
It's like, what do they want for it,
Yeah, what do they want for it? And then what if they don't want to do it next time? So if you put all of that... If you put basic necessity, like water, we know is a basic necessity. If you put that power in the hands of the elite, the 1%, not even the 1%, because 1% is not even that much, the 1 of 1%, right? In their hands, on top of all the power they have now, where does that leave us?
If I were the mayor of Flint, Michigan, and I don't know if they're still having that problem over there, I would be like, this is beyond something, like, we can't handle this. And I would say, all right, we're going to, whoever wants to buy the rights for providing water for this town, you can have it, and you can make profits for the rest of your life selling water to this town. But you have to clean it up, you have to fix it, you got to make it, it's your problem now. You get the rights to it, and then I guarantee, I don't know.
See, that's exactly what they didn't want.
I feel like, how else are you going to solve it, though? I don't get it.
Well, the government's supposed to solve it because it's a human rights issue. because if we say water is a basic necessity, that's like saying if there's no freedom of speech, campuses, there's a lot of like issues around freedom of speech, what you can say, what you can't say. Now, what if Ray Dalio was to say, you know what, I'm gonna control free speech on UConn now. I'm gonna spend money. I'm gonna send some people there. I'm gonna send administrators, and we're gonna get a director of free speech at UConn, and I'm gonna start dictating free speech and making sure it's happened. Now, all of a sudden, you gave a fundamental right to a billionaire when the power was entrusted to the government.
Maybe then a solution, a common ground solution, would be to take the plan I just suggested, but say you get exclusive rights for 20 years. Then after that, I
don't know.
Returns, or
I don't necessarily think it's the worst thing, but this is arguments that I've heard, so I want to be devil's advocate here.
Sure.
But I think, contrary to that, the food industry is private, right?
And look at the variety, look at the prices.
Yeah. Should water be private? That's very interesting. That's interesting. All right.
Well,
that's good.
Shifting gears a little bit.
Yeah.
But still kind of staying on the same topic.
Mm-hmm.
Apocalyptic problems that could happen. One that it's probably my, economics is number one for me because when you look at these numbers, you go, how can these balance out? The other one, which I think is actually way worse, EMP wave.
Oh, okay.
Magnetic pulse.
Very interesting.
So think about it. And actually, I heard on Mark Levin, the man who taught me basically everything I know about the Constitution, inspired me to study it and everything. Just, if you're not listening to him, you're missing out.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. I actually met him twice, too.
Nice.
He had 2 book signings. He's
Okay.
a cool guy. But in any case, so he had a gentleman from, I think, the Defense Department or some, former secretary of blah, 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 whatever. And he basically said, are we protected at all against EMP waves? What is EMP? What's going on with this? Where are we with this? He said, all right, here's what it is. It doesn't, like the nuclear bomb, just above the United States. It doesn't even have to hit like the ground where the people are. It goes into space, it blows up, and it sends like an EMP, just like from the Matrix, shoots it out, and it just knocks out all of our electric devices, all of them, and that's pretty much every single thing in America. And so all that stuff goes out immediately. But the worst part about that is our, besides communication and everything, our electrical grids. There are basically 3 main electrical grids that power the entire United States. And if they hit those, they're out for minimum 6 months. Minimum. Probably even longer than that. And what's the craziest part about all this, and so now, they went into a discussion about, we have Iran, we have enemies who would love to just swallow us whole and see us all devoured. But we can protect these electrical grids. We can build a certain infrastructure that protects them from EMP waves. They cost about $2 billion. And the guy said, where do you get the money from? He goes, you're going to love this. He goes, we give Pakistan every year $2 billion just for like whatever. He goes, if we just didn't give them that money for 1 year, just one time for 1 year, we could protect our infrastructure from an EMP wave like that.
It wouldn't even take Pakistan. I mean, America has $6 billion, like underneath a tank or something. Like come on, $6 billion is nothing, and if it's that easy of a fix, that's pretty frightening.
Yeah, and apparently it's been a part of several different bills that I guess
don't pass.
I don't even think they take them up.
Really?
There's a bill, you got to take it up, and then people. I don't think that's even been taken up.
See, that's my issue. There is one, how many countries are necessarily capable of delivering an EMP, or they even have access to an EMP. Let's say, and
it's just a nuclear bomb. You got to think EMP is just a result of a nuclear explosion. That's what makes it so terrifying.
So it's not a separate device.
No, it's a result from a nuclear explosion.
You know what? You just educated me. because I thought the whole time that an EMP was separate. It was like a separate,
like a different kind of bomb.
yeah, different type of weapon that just had different properties. I didn't, I haven't really researched it.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
That's one of the things. You could hit the bomb in the ground, and then it does that kind of damage. But if you explode it in the atmosphere, it sends this EMP wave out.
Okay, so when they're talking about nukes, they're really talking about EMPs and like bombs. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I can definitely see why they don't want any of these countries getting. and I just really would know, like, what are our current capabilities? And we were never really going to have access because, of course, like most military grade stuff is confidential. But like, I know we have a great missile defense system.
We do?
Yeah.
Do we? I don't know.
I thought we did. We're America. We should. I think that should be standard.
I've heard that the country that has the best missile defense is Israel. They have what's called the Iron Dome.
I know that. Yeah.
What's funny about that is Iron Dome is based off of Reagan's old SDI program, which people were calling Star Wars.
Star Wars. Oh yeah, shooting the satellites.
And this and that. And it's like, well, not only is that really likely, the reason the Soviet Union fell is because they were trying to compete with us economically to get that kind of technology. Mm-hmm. But then that technology, that I guess as far as I know, I could be wrong, but we kind of left it where it was after they kind of collapsed. We were like, well, we don't need this anymore because they're out of commission now, and we're the best, so whatever. But then we took that technology and gave it to Israel, and they continued to develop it, and so now that's become Iron Dome for them. Mm-hmm. So
I don't know. I think Israel and America have a great relationship. I don't see them giving America all their technology. I don't see them withholding. I mean, we give them so much money. We provide so much support. I don't see why they wouldn't. Yeah. That's very interesting. I would like to know how our missile defense system is. Yeah, and where are these located? Like the grids, because you said there are 3 grids.
So there's 3. I know there's one kind of in the center of the country.
Yeah, so I was going to say there's got to be some defense somewhere.
Yeah, there was one. It was weird. So the main one is in the center, and then I think the other 2, from what I remember, one was like in the northeast, the other was like southeast. There wasn't one in the
There's none in the west.
I guess that big one kind of powers all the west.
I can definitely see that because like the west is. We're talking about.
Not as populated. Well, minus California, but.
Well, I was speaking in more regards to like doomsday disasters. Mm-hmm. You always hear about what is it? What's that line called? The San Andreas fault.
Oh, okay.
The fault.
Oh, yeah. I guess it's away from that.
Yeah, away from that. I know you have the what's that park called with the glacier? Yellowstone. That's supposed to be something that could erupt eventually. I don't know. Maybe they're planning for that. It's very interesting.
Well, that'd be smart.
I wonder why they chose not to do that.
I could be wrong. It was a long time ago, but that's what I remember. I remember thinking, oh, that's weird.
I can see that
there.
Yeah. And we'll see what Tesla does. Maybe he'll use one of his gigafactories. I know they've been pretty successful in China. Maybe he'll take it to the next level and put another hub in California. That's interesting. EMPs. Oh man, that would be devastating though. No technology.
Really think about that for a second. I mean, all the electricity alone, we're dead.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like communication. Mm-hmm. Communication towers die. Satellite. No. How are we going to talk to people? How are you going to get anywhere?
Carrier pigeons.
Yeah. let me just Google how to train a pigeon.
How to catch a bird, right?
But, it really, like I always say, the Matrix, because there was a time where some guy, who knows how, like he just said, I'm almost starting it every single day. Let me just catch some pigeons and somehow train them to deliver messages. I mean, a genius. This guy's a genius. This guy lives in the sticks, basically.
Yeah.
Who would think to do that? Training dogs. I mean, I couldn't. I can barely get my own dogs to sit and stay.
Mm-hmm. And I think if we subtracted how much hours we spend on technology, using something electronic related, whether it's in our car, podcasts, video, social media. If we put those hours back into reality, we'd probably be able to do amazing things.
I mean, just
time.
Just like camping. Go camping without tons of stuff, and make your own kind of stick fires, which is actually super hard.
Yeah.
Have you tried to make a friction fire before?
I used to.
God,
I used to be in Boy Scouts, and we had to create a fire, and it was a lot of different ways. I used ice.
Ice?
Through the sun, because you can use it like a magnifying glass.
No way.
And you can set ice. Yeah, because it.
What?
I didn't do a stick. One of my friends was able to do that. That's really hard. Mm-hmm. But ice that you can do is very doable. It's just like a magnifying glass.
Oh wow!
If you get it right. Of course, you got flint and stuff. But yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's crazy. I can't even imagine what it would be like living without technology, especially since we've basically grown up. We did grow up.
We don't know anything else.
Yeah. So we didn't grow up with super advanced technology, but really advanced when you compare it to what the world has been. But that's interesting.
Well, I think I'm a little older than you. Do you remember the days of dial-up?
Yeah, I remember dial-up. Yeah, vaguely. It was on its way out.
I mean, I remember when dial-up was that was the thing.
Yeah.
It was, the equivalence was you were badass if you had 2 phone lines. Because if someone's on the internet, you can't be on the phone. So we'll get a second phone line.
Yeah.
Let's solve that problem. And it was I sort of remember a time before there was a time where there wasn't a computer in the house. And you had to, I don't even remember what I was doing. I was real young then, but...
Yeah, I think we got our computer, I was 5.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, because it was Windows 2000. Yeah. Oh, what an interesting
I remember Windows 2000
software.
being on those giant, just stones.
Yeah,
giant, just
huge,
rocks.
Whatever they want to call it. Yeah, that's very interesting.
The giant modem in the bottom.
Uh huh.
Oh man, it's crazy. But so we grew up with this stuff, and it's then you see the younger generations and how they are, and it's they're worse. They have no other.
It's there's a very good Israeli author, and he talks about the future a lot. He talks about technology. He talks about just issues that the world is facing and is going to face. I think it's his name is Yuval Harari or something like that. When he talks about us as cyborgs, like
man and metal all in.
Yeah, this is what our phone is to us.
It's true.
Who knows more about you than your phone? Your phone knows what you search, how you search, what. If people can actually extract the data from a phone, complete data, I'm talking about back, front cameras, music, everything completely from you, they'll be able to determine what catches your eye, what makes you stop, how long, just various stuff. How do you think? Because the way you ask a question and it's so complex. And yeah, if technology were to disappear, it basically be like you lost a part of yourself, because that's what it is.
You are correct. It is so
especially a phone.
But it's and like I keep saying, it's this is why I always say we live in a matrix, because you are correct. It is so much a part of our life now. But what is our life? It's I think I want to start brewing. I can go on Amazon, pick up a starter kit.
Yeah.
I have YouTube videos that will show me everything I could ever imagine. I have there's a homebrew website that has grains from around the entire world. There's, it's endless, and I could just pick it up. If I didn't have that, or imagine imagine the guy created beer first. What were you thinking, dude?
Yeah.
what was your thought process? How?
That's crazy.
All these things we take for granted, and how if we lost all of it all, how would we get any of it back? We're so far ahead where you need to be some kind of super specialist or this and that. even if like, I mean, I don't know. You know, there's a guy I listen to, and he says, you know, I look at a garbage truck and I think I couldn't build that if like I was born and like someone was like, your job is to rebuild that. Like, we don't have them anymore. This is like what it did. Build it. He was like, I couldn't do it. You give me an entire lifetime to do it, and I don't think I could do it.
No.
And that's how I feel about everything that we take for granted. Everything we have. This microphone, this phone, this cord. I couldn't make this cord. This battery pack here. I mean, how would I make a plastic bag? I have no idea.
And that's, you know, I was kind of talking about this with my friends a few weeks ago. We went bowling, and I was like, you know what? Life's so good. We don't do anything, and yet we get all this new technology. We get the newest phones. Yeah. We're talking about, like, video games. We get the newest game systems.
Oh, God, yeah.
And you don't have to invest in it.
Exactly. It's.
I think that's the beauty of economy. You know,
private free market economy.
Yeah.
Just people will go, you know what? I bet people. I'll take a risk. I'll make something super cool that I think is cool that I think people will want, and he throws it out there, and like, it's some. Who knows? You know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's the Xbox, and it's like, this is the best thing ever, or it's you know, I'm trying to think.
Whatever gaming system failed. You know.
Well, there's a couple actually. That's actually another thing. Now that I'm thinking about the gaming system. Did you know Nintendo 64 was supposed to be this online capable thing?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks to YouTube. There's all these historians out there that talk about this stuff, and like, so for me, like 64 was, you know, it's very nostalgic for me. And it's like, oh yeah, they had all these upgrades, and they're like, you know, if you flip it over, there's this thing. Like, what do you think this port's for? It's supposed to go into this. It clicks into this thing that's supposed to go online.
Wow.
I'm like, these guys were so far ahead of their time.
Yeah.
I guess it only released in Japan because they were like, we're gonna
try it out.
Do other stuff. You know, we're just gonna market in Japan and da da da. And I guess it was awesome.
That's very interesting. That's good to know. I think for some reason when you mentioned that, I thought that Dreamcast had that capability, but I'm not sure.
I know I think they went out of. Well, I think they're out of business, right? It's owned by them.
Well, it's Sega. Wasn't it Sega Dreamcast? Or was it Sony Dreamcast? Who was Dreamcast?
Sega.
Sega Dreamcast,
Sega.
Right?
I think so.
Because it was. I know it was Sega Genesis. I don't know if it was Sega Dreamcast, but I believe it was.
Yeah, because it was.
I don't know who acquired Sega because I don't know.
Was it just Dreamcast? Was it just called the Dreamcast?
You think it was an independent?
I think.
That's very interesting. I'm not sure. Okay, that was good.
Oh man, yeah. I'm thinking about that now.
So my number 2.
Oh, yes.
Skilled labor.
Yes.
I think that is probably the big. I know that's such a major issue in Connecticut, and I'm going to assume across the country.
Yeah, there's a labor
and
shortage.
The world. People just aren't skilled enough.
I agree entirely.
And I think that's definitely one of the biggest issues, because what do you do when somebody's, and you know, Jordan Peterson talks, well, I'll touch on this after, but what do you do when, like, I know there's thousands of advanced manufacturing, I think we talked about this too before, thousands of advanced manufacturing jobs in Connecticut, nobody to fill them. And I'm sure this takes place across the country. I know one governor who ran in 2018, this was like his main thing he kept on iterating. Is like, we have jobs, we just don't have a skilled labor force. And if you think about giants like Amazon, why would they, and how Lamont, and he has some people in his cabinet that are good friends that are on the board of Amazon, and he wants to bring them here. But why come to Connecticut if you don't have the labor to match? And I think that's really across the globe, is how do we get people skilled enough?
Yeah, I think
it. Go on.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of people, they don't like the thing about the trades is that it is hard work, especially because there's such a demand for it. There's always so much work, especially now, and it's brutal. And it's long hours. It's working hard, and I think the only way to mitigate that is you have to like the work that you're doing, and you have to work with like good people. You have to work with like your friends almost.
Yeah.
Because that's I think if you just do those two things alone, I think you'll find like a much happier workforce. You'll find people who are liking what they're doing, and you'll find that they, they're just being more productive in general. But I think people are looking at these other jobs. Like I know, I'm thinking of this job in the city, like at a, like a YouTube kind of place, or like a Vivo, one of those places.
Yeah.
Where they have these facilities, and they have like they have the movie section. It's like, oh, we'll go take like 15 minutes and play some ping pong, or like go.
That's indeed. That's indeed.
Yeah, they're like, and it's smart. It's smart that they're doing that because employees will work later. They'll work. The quality of the work will be better. I mean, it makes basic sense. Happier employees will just work better. And with trades, it's like, no, you're always getting screamed at. It's like you're always behind. You're always being pushed to work faster and do more work, and even stuff outside of your scope and everything.
Yeah,
it's kind of tough. But on the flip side of that, you'll be making $100,000 in like, if you're working like in the city, you'll be making $100,000 in like what, a year, 2 years.
And that's very interesting. And it's interesting. Well, I don't know if you mentioned that type of labor because I talked about manufacturing. But there's even a shortage of developers. If we're talking about the cozy Facebook, like front web developers, back end developers,
like
UX, UI, all of those different fields, they're lacking. Truck drivers, major shortage across the country.
Really, truck drivers?
There's a huge.
I remember
truck driving is the most competitive market in the country.
Well, because who wants to do it? Because long hours,
who
driving
wants to do
away
it?
From family.
But how many people don't have jobs?
And you're right,
that's
though.
80,000. If it's at least $60,000 a year, like, but people want to be a general manager at like, not even general, like a manager at say some store in the mall. I don't know, Journeys. I mean,
Well, they make good money too.
I mean, you make 40, 50K, but you probably need a bachelor's degree or something like that, right? And then you could get you could get a certification and make 60 to 100. And the same thing with machinists or just all of these different fields. You probably count that as advanced manufacturing, but I think that's going to be the biggest issue, because what will the world do? What are we going to do with these people who are unskilled? Are we going to wait till they get trained? What if they don't want to get trained? What do you do with them? And I think at first I was a fan of the dividend. Andrew Yang's $1,000.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They call it the freedom dividend. I was a fan of it, but I think that would stop people from gaining skills. And it's interesting. I don't know how necessarily this country or the world would solve this issue. Would it be free education, free college? Or changing our education system?
I think that's probably where...
That's
just like basic stuff. I think that you hit the nail... What is it? You hit the nail on... God, you hit
on the head.
Yeah. I always want to say... I always like you hit the nail with the hammer. I always say it wrong. So.
Something's getting hit.
that you're hitting on it.
Yeah.
And I think just like I remember in high school, we had a technology course. There was like a residential structures course, and like had more of those.
Yeah, I went to technical school.
More of those. Yeah, I went to I got my automotive degree.
Yeah.
Which kind of covered just the basic electrical, basic HVAC, basic kind of mechanics and that kind of stuff. I loved it. Oh, I loved it. Heating. Covered all sorts of awesome stuff. When you're out in the field, welding and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like almost kind of the all-in-one trade.
No, it really is.
Minus plumbing, but there are like copper lines, but there's like fuel lines.
Yeah, there's some lines there.
So you got to, there's some plumbing principles in there too.
Yeah.
But do not be an automotive technician. They are like, out of all the trades, I think it's the worst because they're just. I think you get paid the least. And you have to know all this stuff. You have to be like a jack of all trades with this stuff.
Yeah.
Go be an electrician. Go be a plumber.
I think there's probably definitely a higher demand, or less of a demand for automotive technicians than there are like electricians and plumbers. That's probably why.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of an auto place. There's like one around every corner, you know. So I think that's probably why there. But even that. So what I was saying earlier about Jordan Peterson.
Oh yes.
So he talks about the issue of IQ and how IQ relates to success and other things like that.
Yeah. I just heard him talk about that actually.
You just heard him talk about it, right?
The victim, right?
No, this one's way old. It's like when he was still teaching at, I think, the University of Toronto or something. But he mentions that, so the military has a standard. I think the IQ level is, I think it's 87 on the IQ scale.
Or 85.
85, something like that. If you don't meet that mark, the military doesn't have a job that you can do.
Yeah.
Even the most basic job. And he talks about how a good percentage of the population does not.
Yeah, like 10%, I think he said.
Is it that little?
I think he said about 10%.
10%? I mean, that's still a lot.
It might just be I don't know if he was talking about America or worldwide, because he just was talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap. And it's like, and it's like, it's weird because IQ is just random. I mean, you could have two idiots come together and they make a genius. I mean, it's not, it's just completely random.
And so, say 10% of the world, that's 600 million people who, if we're just going to base it solely on the U.S. military, and think about it, why would I think he mentioned specifically that the military established this, like I think around Vietnam or something like that. So it was a time where they needed people. Why would they exclude people for no reason? So there's got to be research. This was his point. There's got to be a lot of research that dictates that if your IQ is below this, I took an IQ test. I'm not super brilliant or anything like that. But if your IQ is below that threshold, like you really can't even hold a job. I think you have to be like IQ of 85 to 97 to even be like a janitor and keep that. No, this is like serious stuff.
I know you're right, and it's hard to fathom like what that person thinks or like how they operate or like, you know.
Yeah, because
this is excluding like extreme examples, like people who have like
any mental problem or disabilities.
Just, like, regular
this
dude.
Is every like somebody who you may see walking down just even a school, and I think it was like, because he had it broken down in the video. It was like 85 to 96 is this, 96 to this is that, da da da. So I took an IQ test. My IQ is 120. 120 is like, based on statistically, I would be like a good, like lawyer, somebody in finance. There's a bunch of different roles that IQ would match, but of course, my IQ stops, and then there's like doctors and this and that, and then above that, like rocket scientists, like, you know, and everything like that.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's very interesting to think about labor and to think about IQ and how fundamental that is to what people can accomplish. Or, like you said, is it just like, does it really mean anything? And I think it's definitely an interesting topic, and it'd definitely be interesting to see what people come up with to innovate to solve this issue of labor. Like, what works for some people and what doesn't work. What should we do with the people that nothing works for? If there is such a thing.
I think there is, yeah. I'll go ahead.
That's all I have on that topic.
I think it definitely starts with education. And I was just talking to a friend about the same thing this morning. You know, one of the problems I think with the federal education system is that it's a one-size-fits-all system. And I can't think of a worse way to approach education when you're talking about individuals. And I just, you know, go back to economics, go back to market forces. I think if you just, keep, I guess, the system if you really have to have it, but just let, if you're going to spend the money per child anyway, give it to the parents. Like, we're talking about school vouchers. Let parents have the money. Let people open up schools and let them compete. Say, hey, we can provide this kind of stuff, this kind of education that leads to learning this, whatever the criteria is. Let them just duke it out among themselves. Let people compete for the money, and you'll have a wide variety of things that work well for different people. So people of all different IQs, of all different backgrounds, of all different skills and temperaments and attitudes, they'll all be accommodated one way or another. So there will be a school, there'll be a demand for that, there'll be a school for that. And
yeah,
I don't see.
I honestly, I like that idea. I haven't.
That's the basic school voucher, argument. Really.
Now I heard about school choice. School voucher is different. It sounds like.
I think they're the same as far as I'm concerned. Because school choice is you choose where to send your school, or where you choose where to send.
You must have been trying out some of the homebrew already.
Yeah. Well, so you pick the school that your kid goes to.
Yeah.
And it's school choice, school voucher. That's the thing, they call it a voucher. So it's the money that you get that the government would spend per child, but now you get it. So now it's the same system. They're spending the money, it's whatever, but now you get it instead of them getting it.
That's very interesting. I thought of school choice as, because from what I knew about school choice, it seems like school voucher is very different. I thought school choice was like, okay, we have these schools in Stratford, we have some charter schools, some school in Bridgeport. You can choose which one you go to. But it seems like, in your case, school voucher would create a demand for private schooling. Yeah. Which I think is a little different.
Well, I think it's
good.
Yeah, I mean,
it's still it's definitely school choice, but I think it does elaborate on it, and it opens up opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great idea. I think the more schools we can get, we can definitely make smaller classrooms and curtail it to an individual.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that
that's
you
pretty
can
awesome.
see what works and what doesn't work. And so let's say, like, Connecticut, they do one thing and it has tons of success. Like, they have these kind of programs. Other states can learn from that. And we can look at, Massachusetts, they did this. Oh, God, it failed real bad. Let's avoid that. Like, if you have 50 states all doing different stuff and playing off of each other and taking this and that, like, can you imagine, like, in 5 years, 10 years, what that would look like? I mean, how the quality of education of taking the best of the best from here and there and taking it here and just...
Once you put that's what I'm saying. Once you put profit into something, and once your revenue or your success is determined by you being able to succeed at what you're doing, and not just, okay, you can fail again and again and it can be blamed on a number of issues. Bridgeport is one to blame it on the state for not giving them enough money, the federal government, teachers, they blame it on anybody. But if you're a private school and you're not able to teach effectively or to build a system that works, that's it. You're done.
Yeah. I mean, I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
I say that I have some friends who are teachers, and to become a teacher, you have to go through the most insane process I have ever seen. And I was lucky to kind of be a witness to it from the beginning to kind of the end. Well, not even the end. They're still kind of in the process of it now. And I'm like, I feel like you've been doing this for 10 years, going through this process. Yeah. And it just... It's like, I feel like at the end of the day, you either know the material and can deliver the material, or you can't. It's like, I feel like if I had a room of kids, like, I could teach the Constitution. If someone were to ask me about that, I could teach them that. Yeah. Not just like mine. Like, I know all the original source documents. We can have discussions on them. It would probably be a very college level class. I guess I'm sounding super cool right now. I'd probably, I would still have to refine it, but like the material's there. I like talking to people and engaging in discussions, and it's what I'm doing now. Yeah. But But I could I would have to go back to school. I'd have to go through all this specialized training for who knows what. And I'm sure maybe some of it is valid. Maybe it has some things I didn't think about.
Yeah.
Like how, what if there's disabled children? Like how am I going to deal with that?
Yeah.
I mean, sure. There's probably some things I could learn, but not this like getting these licenses and getting these accreditations and this so many hours and that. Just can you teach material or not? Are you a good person or not? Can you teach or not?
Yeah, it's and on top of that too, the amount of debt that you rack up in going through that process. And in the public sphere, there's only so much money you can get. There's only so much pension and liability and everything you can put on the people to make sure you end up making a really good salary by the time you're, to be able to support your family and this and that. So I actually think that's a great idea.
Oh, the school voucher?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The private, making schools private. Especially if, and there's going to still be public schools.
Yeah, we'll still have
So I guess parents can then choose if they want their kid to go to public school. If they go to public school, do they still get the voucher?
Yeah.
Or do they still get the money?
Absolutely.
And if they do get the money, it's very interesting. And it's definitely an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, it forces schools to, if we
To
want
perform.
more money, we have to perform. What do the consumers want? And whatever
And you
it
can't
is.
just, the only thing is, you can't just make up metrics. So I wanted to see how that would work privately. I think even then, like if you made up metrics or you like did something where it was easier for students to pass or to make your scores look better, I think the parents would notice it in their kids.
Yeah, that's
eventually.
the thing. The parents are going to be the judges. So
Yeah.
That's the thing. What better judge could you have than parents? So, I mean, yeah, like you're saying, there's ways they could twist this and do this. At the end of the day, the kid is going to go to school, they're going to come home, and they're going to, over time, they're going to be smarter or they're not. They're going to be better or they're going to be worse. The parents are going to notice that. Now, of course, you could have neglecting or parents who are neglectful of their children. That's a possibility. But is that a reflection of the system or a reflection of the individual?
Yeah.
Like, do we tear down what could be like the greatest education system ever just because a minority of people are not responsible?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think, and that's the school voucher system. It's not there to make people responsible, to make parents be responsible. It's there to educate children.
Yeah, so give them an option.
So
yeah, I think that's definitely a good point because you're right. With a school voucher or a system like that, whoever is unable to, it'll be more evident why people don't succeed. Is it the school or is it the environment? If it's the environment, okay, this is where we need to fix. If it's the school, then it's out of business.
Yeah, exactly. If it's a bad school, people will pull their kids out. If they have any sense of themselves, they'll pull their kids out. That place goes out of business. Okay, now you're left with more resources for something else to happen. It's just, it's the free market. Like, you're gonna get good stuff, and that's the thing. I think, like you were kind of talking about a metric, a standard, like how we know what's gonna be good at that. And sure, there's parents will be the ultimate judge of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, because I've thought about it too. Like, what if they ignore math and science and that? And I think, well, what if a kid just? I mean, we probably we knew kids that just didn't take to that, so they don't care about reading and writing and reading Shakespeare and no, they want to go change oil on a car, they want to go do welding, they want to do cool stuff, they want to build a shed or something. Like, there should be a school for that, like a technical school. It's like, hey, you know what, let's do carpentry for a year, let's do this for a year, and then take those kids, and this is what a lot of probably our college did this, but yeah, they go take on projects for the community. John Johnson wants a new shed. So that's our project. As our one project, we're going to study carpentry for a year. We're going to go and build them that shed. It's like you could do so many cool things. Yeah,
and I think I forget. Maybe somebody mentioned this or I watched something about this, but it was the world previously. Like, as society, you would be apprenticed into your career. And it's almost that aspect needs to happen in our education system where we don't necessarily want to say, like, this is going to be your bread and butter for the rest of your life, but at least you have bread and butter. Like, at least you have something
I love that.
you can do,
I love that saying.
you know, right now, to provide for yourself and to be self-sufficient. To, you know, as much as you can't be. But yeah, I think that's definitely a good approach. I think that's definitely one way to solve that issue. But the only issue with it is it only is going to solve like the young generation. It doesn't.
We're screwed.
Yeah, it doesn't help 20 to, you know,
well, you know,
ongoing.
You got to start somewhere, and I think you know, enough of us, I think, at least have a sense of ourselves where we know, like, we could tell if our child is getting more intelligent, or you know, you could tell if like if they're coming home and you know better than they were yesterday. I think you'll be able to know if you're, at least if you're at all invested in your kids.
Yeah, if you're invested in your kids, you should definitely be able to.
At least sense it. You know?
Yeah, sense it. But I think that another thing is too, like, technology is makes things so much easier. Like, there's a program, I forget what it's called, but it's something that I was pitching to the Board of Ed when I was running. And what it's like a tablet-based system, and it basically allows teachers to update, you know, like every day, every class, or what have you, just depending on grade, the performance. They can just go and see, like, oh, your kid was late. They didn't do anything. They were talking and this and that. And they got it 60
Can you imagine?
on their task.
I couldn't imagine my parents having access to something like that. I would hate it.
Yeah, that would have really sucked. But at the same time, would I have been a better student? Would I have gotten more out of the 8 or 9 hours I already had to be at school for? Or people who weren't at school, would they have had to go to school? And it's,
I guess for me, I wasn't that bad.
yeah.
But I wasn't a horrible student, so I don't know how much that would have affected me. But yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
That gives it that extra pressure that, oh, I'm being watched.
Yeah.
So now I have to.
You're being observed. I think it's interesting. But there definitely is an issue of labor. And so it's a major issue, and we may have to be heavy-handed on it.
Yeah, and I think it's just, going back kind of the debt, kind of the original discussion we were having. I just envision a world, like, if I were going to write, like, a fiction novel, it would be, like, what would happen if, like, there was, like, a real conservative America again, and we didn't, we were governed by angels. It's like the government, God came down. And said, angels are now congressmen and the president and judges, and all right. So now men don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. And like, okay, so that's all good. Everything's moral and just and correct and good. We're just hanging out. It's like, what would that like look like then? And just like from an economic standpoint, I look at like we have so much debt. And I just imagine, I just think if the government conducted itself like you or I have to in our private lives, where in our bank accounts we have to have a positive number, and we typically like to save money, spend less, and always have like something to fall back on in case something happens or whatever. If the government did that from the beginning, I mean, who's to say they wouldn't have a $210 trillion surplus? Imagine if they had some kind of bank account where or in the Treasury, they just had a positive number in it. Like, just, hey, let's just make sure we'll spend money, we'll take in money, just to make sure we always have like $10,000 or whatever for whatever.
Yeah, rainy day, right?
Let's just say that they had it in there over the course of time, and then like everyone's conducting themselves as best they can, and like you said, now we have this 10% of the population. We just go, you know what? We're saving so much money, we're investing it here and there, we're getting money back in. We can just like take care of these people. Like we could just pay for like everything. Like, maybe every now and then like just throw every citizen a bone or two here and there. Like we could just do this really intelligently, where if we just got our finances in order, like everyone else does. Even like, it's just funny. Every congressman, I'm sure, has a positive number in their bank account, probably a substantial positive number in their bank account. And then when you get to this treasury, which is everyone's bank account, that's $22 trillion in debt. I think it shows.
I think that's very interesting, because it's like at one point it was positive,
the balance was zero at one point.
At one point it was zero, and I feel like is it Ford that's in debt? It's been in debt for quite some time. or GM?
Oh wait, the car company?
Car company.
How long were they in debt? I mean, that I have no idea. How long were they in debt for? Is that your question?
Yeah. At one point, they were making a tremendous amount of revenue and profit. But over time, they found themselves in debt or not making revenue.
Yep.
So it's like, what causes that to occur?
Poor decision making.
And how do we mitigate that?
Well, government's a little different. So,
It's really different.
So government just gets money for free for doing nothing. Ford has to provide a product that people buy in order to make any money. So they have to incentivize people to come into their doors and buy their stuff. Government gets money whether you like it or not. So for them, it's almost extra easy. All you have to say is, listen, we get this much, we're throwing this in the bank, we'll spend some of this, and, that's it. It's so
I'd
easy.
say it's a little less. You made it definitely a little simple.
I think it's
But government
simple.
has so much responsibilities.
Well, that's the part. Yes, it does.
You think
That's
about
what
it like military. I mean, all of the departments. And there's like, what? How many are there? 13?
15.
15?
15 departments.
15
But, like,
departments.
Under those, like, I mean, you take the...
Tons of stuff.
I mean, the little bureaus and boards and agencies and... I mean,
Black sites and all this craziness.
Who knows? I don't think Congress knows.
No, they don't know. They don't know where all the money is going. They know where...
That's true, yeah.
They definitely don't know where all the money is going. So it's like... How do we... It's so interesting to even touch that topic, because how would you even go about beginning to reduce that amount of debt? I think the only way to solve that is like, it would have to happen outside of this planet. No, really. You would need to bring in like a source of revenue like outside.
Like a giant meteor made of like solid gold and
Solid
oil and silver
and all that good
just
stuff.
Gently plop in the middle.
Just boop. And that's the only way to solve an issue like that. If you're, especially when you're talking about, I think you said 22 trillion.
22 for the official national debt.
Official.
Yeah.
But you said more like 200 when you're talking about unfunded liabilities. So that is like insane. 20 probably could be doable with like
Well, you gotta,
a really great strategy. I don't even know what something like that would encompass. But 200, that's a long.
It's inconceivable.
It's inconceivable how long that would take. That would be like generations worth of work.
And I want to put this in perspective for people who may not, we're just saying numbers here. $22 trillion in debt, our total GDP is $21 trillion. Total GDP is every single penny, every asset, anything of value whatsoever that can be turned into some kind of coined paper money. That's every single thing we have. Everything in the United States, GDP. And we are spending $1 trillion more than that. So that, even if they took for 1 year, let's say they had 100% tax on just everything. They said, you own something, sell it, and give us the money for it, whatever. You could do that for an entire year, all of us, and we would still be in debt. Like, just an astronomical amount of money. Mm. That's not even touching that $200 trillion. That's, to put that in perspective, they could take every single cent that we own in the entire economy for 10 years and still have, tens of trillions of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
It's to think about that is
mind-boggling. So
it's beyond us.
Yeah, exactly. It is beyond America. So, I don't even know how to address that. That's
you gotta start simple. Like you gotta stop the flow. If you have a leaking pipe, you gotta at least plug the hole before you start worrying about, all right, what damage to the system.
Yeah, because if you can
cut,
say you cut spending by $2 trillion, throw that towards the debt, right? Then another $2 trillion. Over, give or take with interest, like over 20, 30 years, it should be manageable, I'm going to assume. Eventually, it should balance itself out eventually. In a process like that.
You got to think. So if we're spending, God, I wish I had the numbers now. I don't remember them. I did a tweet the other day that had all the numbers. But if we just cut our yearly spending in half, which could be done. And you know what, like, I like military budget. Let's cut it. Let's just do like an across the board cut on everything. Some things more than others, but just let's do that. Let's at least have like a balanced budget. Let's like get serious with that stuff. Let's start, because I know people love some of these programs and everything, and I get that. And even though they're unconstitutional, I have big problems with that. Let's just say, listen, let's not do this program. Let's not do healthcare at the federal level. Let's do it at the state level. Let your states, if they want to do it, let them do it. Let's start like environment, housing, interior, whatever they do, interior, whatever that means. Let's just take these responsibilities that the federal government has assumed and just give it back to the states. Let them do it. 50 governments is more efficient, even though it's still not efficient. How do I say this? Yeah, I mean, it's more efficient.
It could be more efficient.
Well, it's because it's still government, so it still has the same problems, but it's less so. It's less of an inefficiency.
Because the more you build on a pyramid, like, just again, like local, and that's why I say everything starts local, but local, state, federal, like, once you start creating almost monopolies on each other, less gets done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'd be very interesting to give all that responsibility back to the state and see how they manage it.
Yeah.
I, for one, would not be in favor of that with our leaders here in Connecticut. I think we'd be in for a sad
and you are
awakening.
Right. You are right. And many states would have the same problems. But, like what we're talking about here really is just a return to the 9th and 10th Amendment, federalism, the idea of federalism, where it's just the states have the power to do these things, to kind of engage in societal experimentation and these things. And part of federalism is that if states do this incorrectly, you and I can say this sucks, pack up and we move. Now, it has to get so bad that we're willing to do that, which a lot of people, are just, oh, my family's here, this, oh, I grew up here, whatever. People will stay and they will suffer things, but some people are down with that.
Yeah, some people will just move. And
some people, they may not be able to move right away, but you know what? It's like if you're that upset about how your state is, you have basically 3 choices. You can either run for office yourself, you can try to change the minds of your citizens around you, or you can leave.
Yeah. Those options, I think one thing I love about conservatism is it always finds a way to give you more choices.
We are really a pro-choice movement.
Yeah. The real pro-choice movement.
But you're right, though. Really,
that's good branding.
It really, exactly. We're the real pro-choicers.
Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's. I mean, that's all it's about. Is giving, like, what else is freedom and liberty if not kind of the ability to make choices? It's kind of what I'm writing in my little.
It's good.
Someone called
your manifesto.
Yeah,
I got it.
Someone called the manifesto the other day, and I was like, yeah, and that's actually the main point. Is like, listen, like, there's 2 different concepts of liberty. There's the freedom. It's a freedom from coercion or a freedom to things. And you see that, like, we all talk about freedom, and like. If the conversation is on like kind of the far socialist left, it's, well, healthcare is a human right. And it's like, that sounds really good, but what does that look like in practice? And in practice, it looks like tyranny. It looks like you're forcing the labor of someone else to be provided for, because for what? Like, it doesn't. Yeah. It's just, and at what cost? And it's just so many different things that are wrong with it. But freedom is just no freedom from coercion. No, let me make my own choices. But then on the other hand of that, thanks to Jordan Peterson, revitalizing, because now with rights comes responsibility. So now I have the right to make all these different choices, but now I also, by exercising that right, I have the responsibility of suffering the consequences of whatever choice I make.
And that's what's missing. People aren't suffering. It's true. But it's very true. People are not suffering from their mistakes. Everyone's getting a tap or this and that, or you can try again, or you can do that. And I think it's the exact opposite of what the world used to be. Yeah, and Jordan Peterson actually talks about this a lot, is that people crave responsibility.
Yes.
And that's why I went to my new job. Like, I was craving more. And that's why I ran for mayor. I was craving more responsibility for where I live. And yeah. That's it. Like,
and it's such an awesome thing too, because that's the thing. Like, we have like a void in ourselves. You can call it. What would you call it? We do have this void in ourselves.
Yeah.
And we fill it with materialism.
Mm-hmm.
We fill it with Twitter and the news of the day and this and that and these other things. But it doesn't ever satisfy us. And so what Jordan Peterson's come and done, I think, for a lot of, in particular, young men who are really kind of gravitating towards him, he's saying, like, there's meaning in life, there's purpose in life, and you find it through assuming more responsibility in your life. Like, just take responsibility. And it's like, this has always been the conservative message. It just hasn't been articulated so forcefully like today by him. I mean, Jocko Wilkins is saying the same message. Gavin McInnes, as insane as he is saying the same thing. Like, they're all the same guys, really. They're all saying the same stuff. I mean, he's got a book, Extreme Ownership, where it's like, now you're taking ownership of things that aren't even your responsibility. Yeah. But you're just going that extra mile.
I'm a little against that. I'm more of an essentialist, so you only can control what you can control, and you only can control the essentials. I personally don't believe you should take on more ownership than you have control over.
Or then that's yours to bear.
Yeah, it's yours to bear. We're not saviors.
I guess that's why he calls it extreme ownership.
Yeah. It's like extreme hoarding or something like that. It's like not necessarily a good thing, but for some people it can be.
I think so. I mean, for him it seems to work. Who's that other guy? David Goggins? You know who he is?
He's a little bit different. Is he extreme ownership, or is he just a lack of excuses? I think he's an extreme ownership of your reality. Yeah. Especially your mindset and your reality, you should take extreme ownership. But if, like, I don't know, you're walking, somebody throws something at your head, should take responsibility and say, well, I don't know, I haven't read
your responsibility. I agree with you, but it's like, you got to dodge that.
That's on you, man. You should have known. I don't know, but certain people are kind of like that. And maybe to a lesser example, that was a little extreme, but even say they get laid off, they're like, oh, it's my fault. Sometimes people hold on to things too much. And that's really what I meant by extreme ownership. I don't know if that's what that particular, voice meant, or that author, if that's what he meant by extreme ownership. But I think sometimes people hold on to things and take responsibility for it, and it's not good.
Yeah, some things, like you said, some things like you could be doing everything right, but some guy needs to backdoor deal with someone, and then you get
you get screwed. Yeah, it's like, it's life. There's always going to be things out of your control. I don't think you should own the situation. I think you should own the result of it.
I love it.
Extreme ownership cool. 2.0.
Yeah. Well, we're about an hour and a half in. I think it's probably a good place to
wrap it up
tonight. Final thoughts.
Save your water. Save your water and learn a new skill.
I agree. I would say. Oh, actually, on a final note too about this, my prediction is this about the economic collapse. I think if we don't do something about it, sometime between 2030 and 2040, you're going to start seeing things start going bad. They keep saying that it's been pushed. Different predictions, different reports, CBO reports, government accountability reports, trustees for here and there. 2030, 2040. My suggestion, like you said, get skills, just learn basic stuff. Learn to grow food, learn to hunt, learn to, make potable water, learn to make fires. Get like one of those food supplies that last like 2 months that could feed you and your family, God forbid if something were to ever happen, you can just lock down. Get your pistol permit. Learn to shoot. Get
That's right. I'm going to get that actually in the next week or so.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me know. Well, that could be the subject of the next podcast.
Yeah. I definitely have to get it.
But don't be a prepper, or actually, be a prepper. That'd be cool. But just be prepared. Be intelligent. Just be mindful that if things were to go bad, like, can I survive like at least 2 extra weeks, to like get out in the world and figure stuff out? Like, I'm always thinking about that stuff, and I'm nowhere where I want to be because again, like, I'm living in this matrix where I have to go here and do this, and I
got responsibilities.
But it's like they're matrix responsibilities. Like, I should also be like, all right, I'm gonna go practice like my bow drill fire set. I should go and like, just be better than you were yesterday.
That's it. That's all you can ask, right?
Awesome. All right, thank you, my friend.
Yes.
See you next week.
That's it.